Te Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamide Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Brhad Bhagavatamrita, Part 2, Chapter 4, Text number, I think it's 148. The same kind of ecstasy these devotees previously enjoyed in worshiping the Lord, they continue to relish here in Vaikuntha. They obtain it as a unique, uninterrupted, unceasing bliss, newer and newer at every moment. Let's go, right? Commentary. The type of devotional ecstasy each new resident of Vaikuntha developed in his last material life continues in Vaikuntha, but on the platform of spiritual perfection. And the ecstasy constantly grows, acquiring newer and newer variety. 149, 150. As before, these devotees see their own worshipable Lord with all his unique features they found charming, his same entourage and everything else. These devotees, each in his favorite mood, constantly hope to serve him. They are indeed the wisest of saints, for they have each attained the final perfection of their faith. Commentary. Each Vaikunthavasi worships a form of the Lord as seen together with that Lord's unique entourage and paraphernalia. Lord Raghunath, for example, is accompanied by his brothers, headed by Lakshmana, and by the daughter of Janaka. He also has his bow, his kingdom Ayodhya, and his pastimes like being exiled to the forest. The devotees of Sri Raghunath are especially attracted to these unique characteristics of the Lord, those devotees, and all the others in Vaikuntha are the best of saints because their faith in the Supreme Lord is unalloyed and unshakable. Seems to say that the pastime of being exiled into the forest is in Ayodhya also. Doesn't say it specifically, but sounds like, which is interesting. 151. Thus, they worship their favorite forms of the Lord in the places where he resides, his opulent cities or other abodes, and expand the ocean of happiness. Commentary. The Vaikuntha kingdom has many confidential areas, including cities like Lord Ramachandra's Ayodhya, devotees who, while living in the material world, worshipped the Supreme Lord as residing in some particular abode, go to a similar abode in Vaikuntha where they continue to worship him with the entourage and paraphernalia that attracted them. The Almighty Personality Godhead is present in Vaikuntha as Narayana seated in his excellent palaces on the best of thrones, but to all his surrendered devotees, he displays whatever aspects of himself they love. with special affection. We should never think that Lord Narayan's display of multiple forms to various devotees is illusory, semicolon. There is no influence of the illusory material energy in Vaikuntha, and the Lord is capable of doing whatever he wants. The special abodes like Ayodhya that are manifest within Vaikuntha are not separate worlds, but special displays of spiritual variety arranged to expand unlimitedly the Lord's glories and the ecstasy of his devotees. 152. Devotees not exclusively attracted to one form of the Lord, those whose affection is not focused on a single appearance of his, are ready to serve him in any form. Commentary. Some devotees are attracted to all of the Supreme Lord's appearances. Those devotees serve any one form of the Lord of Vaikuntha without any preference as to which. Other devotees are attracted to serving 2, 3, or several particular forms. Shoo. 153. Some devotees dedicated themselves to the 8-syllable mantra or some other mantra for the husband of Lakshmi. And when those devotees left their material bodies, they obtained the shelter of this Vaikuntha. Commentary. Devotees of Narayana can realize his association by chanting his mantra of 5, 8, or 12 syllables. Sri Parashara Rishi states in the Vishnu Purana 1.6.40, quote, even the moon, sun, and other planets are created and destroyed again and again, but persons who have meditated on the 12-syllable mantra have never had to return, even till the present day. Paragraph. Since all of Lord Narayana's mantras call upon his holy names, the 12-syllable mantra mentioned here refers indirectly to all the Lord's mantras, not just the mantra of 12 syllables, as effective means for achieving Vaikuntha. Devotees who worship the Lord perfectly with any of his mantras attain his shelter in the next life. And among the sheltered devotees, those who worship the Lord as the supreme controller reach him in Vaikuntha. 153. All the devotees in Vaikuntha enjoy the particular happiness for which they aspired and feel it greater than all others. This creates a hierarchy of tastes, but within it a simultaneous equality. Commentary. Whatever happiness a devotee may have felt from worshiping the Supreme Lord in the material world expands without limit when he achieves entrance into Vaikuntha. In other words, even though all devotees in Vaikuntha share the same basic spiritual nature, they feel varieties of pleasure. Different devotees relish various qualities of ecstasy in their hearing, chanting, and worshiping, and the ecstasy of one devotee may be greater than that of another. Still, each devotee in Vaikuntha is satisfied with his own devotional service, whatever his rasa. When it develops to full maturity, he fully tastes the ecstasy natural to it. This point has already been discussed, and later it will be made even more clear. 55 through 50, 155 through 157. Long verse, 3 verses. In the Lord's appearances on earth, he shows similar varieties and equality. The Lord's forms are the shelter and the treasure of the earth. Among them are Nararayan and Dattatreya and Parashara, the son of Jamadagni, and Kapila. There are those who playfully assume the appearance of deities, and those such as Vishnu and Yageshwara, whom you have seen on Swargaloka and other higher planets. There are such various incarnations as Machakurma, Mahavaraha, Shriman Nrsimha, and Vamana. Each of these forms of the Lord has his own activities and names, yet all of them are full in eternity, knowledge, and bliss, though manifesting variety in substance, they are eternally one. Long purport, 3 pages. Liberated devotees of the Supreme Lord can display varieties of personalities within the basic oneness of spiritual existence because they are empowered by the Lord, who shares with them his inconceivable ability to be simultaneously one and many. God is one, but he displays himself with infinite variety. He has his original form as Krishna in Goloka and his expansion as Narayana in Vaikuntha, plus innumerable other expansions in the spiritual and material worlds. Counted among the avatars he displays in the material realm are his deity forms. In different corners of the universe, he appears as innumerable deities, each with its own form and personality, like Sri Sankarshan in Ilavrita Varsha, Sri Jagannath in Purushottam Kshetra, and Sri Ranganath in Rangapuri, to mention just a few. In the heavenly planets, he appears in expansions such as Vamana, Vishnu, and Yogeshwara. Throughout the material worlds, he descends in many incarnations, some famous, like Lord Matsya and Lord Kurma, others lesser known, like Lord Hayagriva and Lord Hangsa. The activities, names, and forms of these avatars are manifold, but they are all one personality of Godhead, complete in unadulterated eternity, knowledge, and bliss, as stated in the Maha Samhita. Quote, there is no difference between any of the incarnations of the Lord, and no difference between his body and his soul. In truth, all the incarnations are all pervasive and infinitely subtle. Thus plays the Supreme Person Janardana, making use of his opulent powers. At Badrik Ashram, Lord Narayan appears with his younger brother, Nara, as the son of Dharma, and acts as guru for the performers of austerities. In text 155, the word Adi, Kapiladi, Yaha, implies other incarnations, including Vyasadeva and Dhanvantari. In text 156, the word Adi, Swarga Lokadishu, implies additional appearance places of the Lord on Maharloka or on Satyaloka and in the universal coverings formed of earth and other elements. In text 156, the second use of the word Adi Vishnu Yogeshwaradi Yaha alludes to Lord Mahapurusha on Brahmaloka and to the forms of the Lord, such as Brhad, worshipped in the coverings of the universe. Gopal Kumar has seen many of these forms of the Supreme Lord. The form of Sri Vamana mentioned separately here is different from the four-armed Lord Vishnu, who is the presiding deity on Swargaloka. What's that distinction? You follow that one? Vamana mentioned here, but he's, on the one hand, you're saying they're non-different, then he's saying they're different. So which the Vamana that's being referred to here that's different from, because when he went to Indraloka, he saw Vamana, Indra worshiping his younger brother, and then after worship he disappeared and all of that. So the presiding deity on Swargaloka is Vamana. The form of Sri Vamana mentioned separately here is different from the four-armed Lord Vishnu, who is the presiding deity in Swarga. Paragraph. As we learn from the Puranas, several incarnations of Lord Vishnu appear more than once at different times and under different circumstances. It is known, for example, that Matsya, the greatest of fish, appeared once at the end of a cycle of yugas to save the Vedas during the devastating flood of the universe, and appeared once more during a partial flood of the lower part of the universe to show his mercy to Satyavrata Muni. There are also two Lord Kurmas. One held the Mundra mountain on his back while nectar was being churned from the ocean of milk, and the other always holds up the earth. Similarly, there are at least 5 Lord Varahas. The first appeared from Brahma's nostril at the beginning of creation, lifted the earth, deposited her on the Garbha ocean, and then disappeared. The second saved the earth from a partial flood of devastation, killed Hiranyaksha, and went to Swargaloka. The third, the embodiment of Vedic sacrifice, taught the methods of sacrifice, lifted the earth, spoke to her, the Viraha Purana, and disappeared by his mystic power. The fourth took the earth and made her even by grinding down the excessively large mountains with his sharp tusks. The earth then assumed the form of his consort Varahi, enjoyed with him, and gave birth to 2 sons. That Lord Varaha finally disappeared by merging into the form of Lord Nrsimha. And yet, a 5th Varahadev perpetually holds up the earth from below. Lord Nrsimha also made several appearances, as we know from such sources as Brihad Sahasranam Stotra. One Nrsimha defeated all the celestial mothers. Another ripped apart Hiranyakashipu. Listen to this. And yet another assumed the form of an ordinary cat. And another assumed the form of an ordinary cat. C-A-T. Wow, is right. Sanatana Goswami Ki Jai. There were also 2 appearances of Vamanadev to trick 2 different asuras, Dundhu and Bali. And there were 2 appearances each of Lord Hayagriva and Hamsa. That was text 157, chapter 4, if you want to go back and look it up. 157, chapter 4. And if only Gopi Pranadana were around, we could ask him, where are the references for this? Text 158. The differences between them should never be seen as illusory, any more than one should the plurality of the conditioned souls. Rather, the differences between the Lord's forms are displays of the energies that underlie his spiritual pastimes. The differences are born of the various moods of his various worshippers. Commentary. Someone might argue that only by illusion can a single being appear as many, but the verse at hand explains the truth. As we know from the teachings of Vedanta, the jiva souls are real and they are factually distinct from the Supreme Soul and from one another. The differences between the individual jivas and the Paramatma and the differences among the jivas themselves are not illusions created by Maya, nor does one jiva appear divided into many souls simply by false designations, nor does the one supreme truth reflect itself into many small images. Jivas who have no real existence on their own. The jivas are real and their differences are real. In the same way, all the forms of Godhead are real manifestations of his pure spiritual essence displayed by his personal energies. Paragraph. The personality of Godhead is a vast ocean of many different modes of loving exchange. His various devotees respond to his various pastimes by developing individual varieties of ecstasy, and the Lord reciprocates with these ecstasies by showing himself in different ways. His devotees are concerned with him alone, and therefore, whenever a devotee becomes extremely anxious to see him in a particular form, the Lord at once shows that form to the devotee. These appearances of the Lord, though apparently ad hoc, are in fact eternal, real, and all-pervading. By displaying his pastime incarnations, the Supreme Lord fulfills the hankerings in the hearts of all pure devotees. Were he to fail to do so, his most significant glory, unlimited kindness to his surrendered servants, would be lost. If any form in which the Lord appears were to prove non-eternal, unreal, or less than all-pervading, the devotees worshiping that form would be disappointed, and great harm would come to their spiritual lives. Therefore, none of the Lord's incarnations allow themselves to be affected by the illusory influence of Maya. We're being taken to a high place through sound. That's what's going on. It reminds me of reading Bhaktisiddhanta's writing. It's just like, wow, where are we going? Way above our heads, but just by sound, we're being lifted. Okay, 159. Therefore, this variety does not arise from the difference between an object and its reflected image, as with the sun reflected in water. Rather, the Lord's forms are like the one sun standing undivided in the sky, seen everywhere, but in different ways, in different places. Commentary. The variety of the Supreme Lord's appearances cannot be understood by the logic of an object and its reflection, because every one of the Lord's forms is eternal and real. In the object-reflection model, the only object that would be eternal and real would be the original, the avatari, the form of the Lord, from which all his other forms expand, semicolon. All the other forms of the Lord would be temporary and unreal, like mere reflections. In effect, the expanded personal forms of the Lord would be products of illusion. The theory of expanding by reflection, therefore, is untenable, semicolon. The Supreme Person in all his forms is the same original object, complete in eternity, knowledge, and bliss, paragraph. The sun may be reflected in various bodies of water, or any object may be reflected in several mirrors. The one then appears to be many because of its images in various places. But the variety among the Supreme Lord's forms is not like that, for the varieties shown by the Lord. The more fitting analogy cited here is that of one object, the sun, being viewed differently by people in different places. Each person, from where he stands, sees the sun appearing differently against the backdrop of nearby objects, trees, hills, etc. Similarly, diverse worshippers of the Supreme Lord see him with different forms, complexions, and qualities according to their individual ecstatic moods. One devotee sees the Lord as a brilliant sphere of light. Another as having 4 arms and a red complexion, and yet another having 2 arms and holding a pair of lotus flowers. None of these different visions are illusory, because they are perceived by pure devotees, whom the Lord has no reason to deceive. He's covering some important territory here. Theory of reflection. 160. The Lord's various forms are one, just as knowledge and happiness, though separate entities, are one because they are both aspects of the same absolute truth. Commentary. 2 pages. Anyone can understand from experience that since knowledge is the cause of happiness, happiness and knowledge are 2 separate entities. The difference is real, not illusory, because both knowledge and happiness are distinct and real aspects of Brahman, the absolute truth. But then again, due to the very fact that knowledge and happiness belong to the essential nature of the absolute, the 2 are really one. According to the Taittiriya and other Upanishads, Brahman's identity is knowledge and also happiness. And since Brahman is always one, non-dual, its aspects of knowledge and happiness are also essentially one. Its aspects of knowledge and happiness are also essentially one. Demonstrably, knowledge and happiness are one and different and real, because the absolute truth is himself both one and many, and he is real in the variety he exhibits. Thus we read, and there's like a whole 6 references. Brhad, quote, the Supreme Lord has no material form made of flesh, marrow, and bones. He has a form not by virtue of practicing yoga, but because he is the absolute Lord. The personal form of the infallible, all-personal Lord is real. Mahavaraha Purana states, all the bodies of the Supreme Soul are eternal and unchanging. They never undergo loss or change, and they are never creations of material nature. Same source. In all conditions, they are full of the greatest intense bliss and pure consciousness, endowed with all auspicious qualities and devoid of all faults. The bodies of the Supreme are all free from defects, unsurpassed in excellence, and full in all transcendental qualities. Thus, the Supreme Controller's body and soul are never different from one another. Two more. Quote, when scripture records that he accepts bodies and maintains them and gives them up, those arrangements are to be understood as causal and eternal, just like accepting someone's hand in friendship. Saying that he is different from everyone else does not mean that he is nothing, does not mean that he is nothing but pure consciousness. I'll read that again. Tat svikaradi shabdastu hasta svikara vat smritaha vaivakshanyan navatatra jnana matra artam iritam. Anyway, when scripture records that he accepts bodies and maintains them and gives them up, those arrangements are to be understood as causal and external, casual, not causal, casual and external, just like accepting someone's hand in friendship. Saying that he is different from everyone else does not mean that he is nothing but pure consciousness. And finally, by consorting with his exclusive potencies, the Supreme Lord transcends material nature, assumes forms like this one, and in various other ways maintains his unique status. And that's Mahavaraha Purana. Text 161-62. Thus, although Krishna, his associates, and his abode are seen in various forms in different places, and in dreams and other special states of consciousness, they are with perfect consistency one, although many, and they are always real. When any one of his forms is satisfied, that too, so too are all his other forms. Commentary. If one worships Krishna in any of his forms, whether they reside in Vaikuntha or any other of his abodes, one satisfies all his expansions. All the devotees of the Lord's plenary expansions, therefore, have great fondness and regard for one another. 163. That one Lord of Vaikuntha, Sri Krishna, resides in various places and appears in many forms just to give pleasure to all his multitude of servants. Commentary. The Supreme Lord has a multitude of devotees to satisfy, and that is the fundamental reason he appears in so many different forms. He assumes forms like Dharma Nandana and resides in abodes like Badrikashram to give pleasure to devotees such as Sri Narada. And as implied by the suffix adi, as in tat rupadina, as implied by that suffix adi, he displays various kinds of bodily ornaments, pastimes, and so on. Narada ascribes such greatness to the Lord of Vaikuntha because Lord Narayan, like Krishna in Goloka, is avatari, a source of expansions and incarnations. With this idea in mind, Narada in this verse calls Lord Narayana by the name Sri Krishna. The use of the name Krishna subtly implies that Sri Krishna in Goloka is the most glorious of all the Lord's forms. Very, very subtle. You're being very careful. (164). Sri Brahma perceived this truth when he stole Krishna's boys and calves in the forest of Vrindavan, and I realized it while wandering among his many palaces in the city of Dwarka. Okay, the commentary is 4 pages long. And it's 8 after 8. I think this will be it. Narada now strengthens his presentation by citing the personal experience of self-realized authorities, namely himself and his father, Lord Brahma. As described in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Brahma stole Krishna's young cowherd friends and calves. The one supreme Lord Krishna then expanded himself into the forms of all the boys and calves just to keep their mothers happy, the gopis and the cows. 1 year later, Brahma returned and saw each of the boys and calves suddenly assume the forms of Lord Vishnu on a paragraph. No one should think that only the original form of Krishna was real and all his expanded forms as boys and calves were mere reflections produced by Maya. Brahma's own perception contradicts that idea. Bhagavatam 10:13-58. The Vishnumurtis all had eternal, unlimited forms full of knowledge and bliss and existing beyond the influence of time. Their great glory was not even touched, not even to be touched by the Gyanis engaged in studying the Upanishads. As this incident confirms, the Supreme Lord is always real, whether he is one or many. Brahma thus prayed to Lord Krishna in Srimad Bhagavatam, the next chapter 14, after being baffled in his attempt to fool Krishna. This is verse 18, chapter 14, canto 10. Have you shown me today that both you, yourself, and everything within this creation are manifestations of your inconceivable potency? First, you appeared alone, and then you manifested yourself in all of Vrindavan's calves and as the cowherd boys, your friends. Never. And next, you appeared as an equal number of four-handed Vishnu forms who were worshipped by all living beings, including me. And after that, you appeared as an equal number of complete universes. Finally, you have now returned to your unlimited form of the Supreme Absolute Truth, one without a second. Unquote. That's the first page of 4. In other words, Brahma that day asked Lord Krishna whether Krishna had not indeed shown him the illusory nature of the material world. Krishna is personally present in this world created by Maya, which is insubstantial, like a dream or a flight of fancy. And he displays himself within this world of Maya in not only one, many different forms. But that day, by disguising himself as his cowherd friends and calves, Krishna made Brahma see the world as if Krishna were not present, even though he always is. Paragraph. Every form Krishna assumes is real because he and his expansions are the supreme absolute truth. First, Brahma saw Krishna alone, then in the form of all the cowherd boys and calves, and then these became four-armed Vishnu forms worshipped by all the beings of creation, subtle and gross, including Brahma. Brahma saw the many Vishnus, as many Vishnus as there were boys and calves, and each Vishnu was being served by all the causal elements. Yeah. Vishnu is being served by all the causal elements and visible objects of the entire universe. In effect, then, Brahma saw a universe for each boy and each calf. And then he saw only the unlimited supreme, one without a second, as all the forms of Vishnu merged back into one, leaving only Krishna, the supreme Brahman. Lord Brahma realized that all these appearances were equivalent, since they were all untouched by the illusory Maya and her energies. When Narada visited the thousands of palaces of Krishna's queens in Dwarkapuri, he too saw for himself the simultaneous oneness and variety of the Supreme Person, wandering from one palace to another. In each palace, he saw a separate Krishna acting in a different way. This does not mean that Krishna was factually only in one palace and appeared in illusory forms in the others. Did Krishna's devoted servants deserve to be cheated in such a way? As if he didn't care enough to be truthful with them? Would Krishna act in such a duplicitous way? The same Krishna who is the best of compassionate benefactors, the ever concerned caretaker of his devotees, and the surrendered servant of his servants? Certainly not. Nor should anyone propose that because different residents of Dwarka simultaneously saw Krishna in different palaces, the visible facts disprove that Krishna is one. If Krishna were not one, the millions of Yadus could not have cooperated with one another so well to reciprocate with him. Moreover, every day when Krishna left each of his palaces to attend the Sudharma assembly, one single Krishna, not 16,108 different Krishnas, arrived at the hall. And there's looks like about one page remaining. When Narada visited Dwarka, Krishna kindly allowed him to witness his daily activities in the palace of each queen, as Shukadeva Goswami describes, chapter 69. Quote, thus, in every palace, Narada saw the same form of the Lord, carrying out the transcendental principles of religion that purify those engaged in household affairs, unquote. At the very beginning of the same chapter, 69, Shukadeva says, Narada thought, it is quite amazing that in a single body, Lord Krishna simultaneously married 16,000 women, each in a separate palace. Thus, the sage of the demigods eagerly went to Dwarka to see this for himself. Last paragraph. Narada was eager to go to Dwarka to see Krishna in his palaces, only because Krishna had married 16,000 princesses, all at the same time, while remaining in one and the same body. Had Krishna married his queens by expanding himself into 16,000 duplicate forms, Narada's eagerness would not have been so aroused, since Narada and the other masters of mystic yoga, like Sobari, are also able to expand themselves into duplicate forms. It was by sharing in Krishna's own mystic power to appear in expansions factually identical with Sri Devaki, Vasudeva, Uddhava, and other devotees had also been present simultaneously with Krishna in several different palaces. Wow, is right. As Narada had witnessed. Therefore, Narada was correct when he told Gopakumar, Krishna, his associates, and his abode are with perfect consistency, one although many, and they are always real. Unquote. That's from previous text 161 to 162. This very same point comes up again when they meet in Dwarka. And Narada said, don't you remember? We talked about this. He said, wow, what are you doing in Dwarka? You're everywhere. I saw you here, there, and there, and there, and there. What's going on? And these are simultaneously in multiple places. I explained this. Then he says it again. Well, we've been transported to another place. And we're not at Braja yet. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Sanatana Goswami ki jai.